Hello, I'm Dorothy and filming is Patrick on the camera, and we're Toronto Master Gardeners. This is a 15-year-old climbing hydrangea, and what I want to go over today is some of the care for a climbing hydrangea and some pruning. This is a prime example of right plant, right location. It's an east-facing fence, and so it gets morning sun, but it's partial shade in the morning because there's a lot of other trees and plants around it that shades it. Climbing hydrangea will also grow in sun, but in sun it does need more moisture because it's a moisture loving plant. Its name hydrangea, hydra is the Greek for water and andrea is the Greek for vessel. So the name of it tells you what water needs it has. In more sun you will get more blooms, but partial shade is probably ideal, and a north facing or an east facing wall is really perfect for it. Soil conditions it likes is a rich moist soil, add compost in the spring, and it also likes a slightly acidic soil.
And what about fertilization, Dorothy?
Yes, a granular fertilizer in the spring before the buds break is a good idea, one that's high in phosphorus, and you should get good blooms. And also after blooming, apply the granular fertilizer. So I'm going to do a bit of pruning today. With a climbing hydrangea, when you first plant it, the first 3 to 5 years, you might find really nothing's happening and it just doesn't take off. But then it will grow very vigorously. You can go 3 to 5 years without even any flowers. So in the first 3 to 5 years, you really don't need to do any pruning at all. After that, I recommend that you prune off, after blooming, prune off the flower heads. And also you can do a little bit of structural pruning if, for instance, it's growing too much out from the structure, like this one here, for instance. Some people think that it's not good to grow vines against a brick wall, but if your mortar is intact, a climbing hydrangea does not damage the brickwork. In fact, its suckers really stick to the brick or to your surface because they are sticky. So you're not going to cause damage if your walls or your structure is sound. Also, you shouldn't grow this against a flimsy trellis because it's a very strong vine once it's established, and it will simply eat up anything that's weak. There are 4 types of pruning. The first one is really light pruning for after blooming. You just take the blooms off. A second type of pruning is if it's getting too vigorous and it's growing into other things, you might want to prune it back. Third one is after winter, if there's damaged growth or dead branches, you want to prune them off. In fact, you prune them off at any time. And the fourth one, if it's a really old vine and it is neglected, then you can cut it right to the ground and it will come back. You won't have flowers that first year, maybe not into the second, but it will come back really vigorously and you'll get a lovely new vine out of it. So today I'm simply going to really take off this year's blooms. It blooms early summer, and you want to take those off. You don't want to do pruning late because you're going to be taking off potentially next season's flower buds. This is an example here of where I'm going to prune this. There's a flower bud on the end, and then the branch goes back to where more growth comes. So I'm just going to prune beyond that growth back there and take this off with the flower buds. This one here is an example of it's growing right out from the wall. It's not sticking to anything. It's getting in the way of this hosta. So I'm just going to prune it back to where there's a good bud further back. And likewise with this one. Again, this has come away from the wall and I want to take it right off. Back to here.
What did you mean by bud?
This one here has fallen away and I'm going to go back to here. I know I mentioned bud before. I really should have called it a shoot because it has come out as a shoot, so I'm cutting this one off back at this shoot and then it will grow out from there. So this is an example of one that I pruned off, and these are really they're aerial roots, and when this grows along the ground, this will take and become a really good ground cover. So you can allow the climbing hydrangea to grow along the surface as well, and you get good ground cover. The other thing I should have mentioned, before I do any pruning at all, I always clean off my pruners with an antibacterial wipe, just so that I'm not transferring any disease from one plant. This shows the hydrangea as a ground cover from this plant. So I prune just beyond the shoot. Again, I'm going to take this length off. Again, just beyond these shoots.
Go.
There are a lot of flowers on this one. I'm going back, take them all off. Here. The more sun your climbing hydrangea is in, the more water it's going to need. And finally, on pruning, if it has got too overgrown, you can prune it back and take over 2 to 3 years to get it back into a more compact and dense form.
You can take it right down?
You can also, yes, you can also take it right down to the ground and bring it back that way, but a less drastic way to do it is doing it over 2 to 3 years of pruning after the flowering in early summer.